Okay, we'll continue. Like I said, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. Not saying I discover anything with every stone that I turn over, but we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at. There's not much to see within the Rhino window, but we will leave it there for a second. Um, move that pretty face over here, and we're going to take a look at complex numbers, which I'll talk a little about color and culture, and those are all in the geometry fields, the primitive fields here as we go through. And yes, I'm looking forward to domains, the GUID, maybe get into matrix time. We'll get through here. I am excited about getting into things that I've figured out. I did get into the protein databases and the atom data, and I learned that from Parametric House, and they have some great tutorials. It feels really good to figure things out through research, and those to me are the scholars. Those are people that actually search for the gold in life, not the gold, not the common gold. They're looking for the sense of knowledge. And with complex numbers, I remember leaving it. I thought it was hilarious as a kid in math that the concept of a square root of -1, you can't figure it out, so let's build a whole other number system that can do that. If you know anything about and call it the imaginary number system. It's just outrageous. It's fantastic. It's almost to the same level of when we were dealing in mods and no, factorials, and somebody decided, okay, 0 factorial doesn't work for anything if it doesn't equal 1. So we'll just make, 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 equal its multiplication. 5 factorial, let's do 3 times 2 times 1. Let's do 1 times 1. And then they get to, what do we do with 0 factorial? And they're like, oh, let's just make it equal to 1. Which makes no sense to me, but it makes the whole system work. So if the complex number system of having imaginary numbers, I being the second digit, representing the square root of -1, sure. But I have no concept. I'm not intelligent enough to figure out how to deal with that geometrically. And I would like to see some examples, and I'm sure if I looked online, I'd find plenty. But it's a conceptual exercise. It's worth going into. If you go into the complex, I think I end up tracking after getting into the create complex numbers. You can hit Control Alt. You find that that's over in the maths, and there's a whole final section on complex argument, complex real, and imaginary. Um, Kind of an interesting tool. How do I do it? Conjugate it, which sounds like language. It reminds me of the movie Life of Brian, where he has to conjugate the verb upon death with the Roman guard, kind of putting his sword to him. Like I said, there's a humor here, and but there's also a sense of figuring it out, which would be very exciting to do. I obviously haven't figured it out yet, but I have a mind for it, and you know, uh, finding a language that's alien to you. I have enjoyed traveling, have enjoyed learning other languages, or at least during my travels, learning enough. Please, hello, goodbye, thank you, yes, no, to get by has made that interesting. So learn as much as you can about this stuff. Color, yeah, I have used it. Definitely no color uh, containers would take effect for putting gradients into custom previews, which, like I said, I'm more into the geometry, but if you want to go in, you want to play with these numbers, it's pretty cool that you can have this range here, and then you can kind of parameterize that between 1 and 0 and have an effect on these colors and pull it in and say, okay, I want a real content there. That's to think of colors as numbers. I think those are for the visual artists. I think there are people that have a sense for that. But interesting node, you can play with it in many, many ways. It's a container for colors, and you can have multiple colors, and you can do spray blurs and everything. And then let's get on to something that I can't figure out to save the life of me, and I'm okay with it. I kind of feel bad because I'm stuck in the Midwest, and I'm probably not as multicultural as I was up in Toronto, and I certainly am becoming less and less cultured the longer I stay here. But culture as a tool, what an interesting thing that you can go in and be faced with invariants and then any type of geographical or linguistic language. And what I thought, it would throw on all the accents in Polish, and I'd have all this new lettering out of Bulgarian Cyrillic language, and I kind of get it, but what it ends up doing is it formats to this strange data coming in as a closed in brackets, and I'm able to kind of like pull a number out and find the nearest and floor and deal with the cultures and the data and try and figure that out. Well, honestly, I'll just take this panel that says double click to edit panel, put it in there. I don't care what the culture is. I can turn it into cap locks and low letters. And I haven't found a purpose for the culture of what I'm doing as well. And then when I go online and I go into Grasshopper forums and I type it in, I get hit with this like whole incredible
formatting of this data coming in. Why would I ever type a panel in like that? Well, obviously there's reasons too, and you can set this as Netherlands, Norse, uh, Francais, and invariant. And what happens is you end up with all this different numbered data, and they said it's tied to HTML, and I figured it's coding and the same ideas of numbers, colors going into numbers, and figure, okay, languages go into this kind of formatting. That said, there's a use of the culture node. It doesn't fault out. It seems to be functioning as a container. But like I said, this is where you get with Grasshopper. It's like, well, what would I need that for? Well, you don't need to do everything with it. They say there's like 20% of stuff that you learn will do 80% of what you want it to do, but you have to keep stretching that métier of what you're doing. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's a short little tutorial that goes nowhere. But I think it's important to talk about things that way as you're learning. And as a teacher, I know my students get frustrated. There's a lot of flipping the classroom. They have to learn on their own. But those self-discoveries and those new directions for this, because you don't know what they're used for, are going to allow for some real creative thought. And to me, a seminar-based course on why Grasshopper, why digital modeling for the 21st century sculptor. If I spent 30 years casting and making works, this technology seems to have a role in it. I do have some deeper research, and I've actually started to pull over here on the PB imports. So I'm going to be able to pull up some pretty incredible uh, resources for that. So I've done deeper into that than I did the complex numbers, and there's some incredible tutorials. And I've just said, like, I'm never going to add up to that. Here's an alternative one off of Parametric House, which is pretty awesome. It only has like 2,000 likes after 3 years, but I think it's incredible. But maybe it's so specific to what somebody want to do. So I'm gonna wait for the next one to load that up, and I'm actually interested in going into things that obviously I use often, domains, domain twos. Like I said, I've dug a little bit in the matrices, but definitely more into this through Carl Singlein's work. Hopefully I'll be able to make these kind of, and you're already using these you'll have to have a sense of bringing in other files and data. My data management is poor. I've always had trouble with computers. They always fill up and junk up, and I get lost in them. You should see my files, just Grasshopper files, trying to coordinate them. That's why anything like snippets or clusters and things come in handy. And all these containers actually make for that progress and getting better at it. And I understand more than anything because I don't have an instructor on this. So all my instructors are coming offline. I have a handful of people that I think have really been able to communicate to me their ideas, and I hope I can be that for other people. But don't expect all the answers from me. I definitely am humble enough to say when I'm lost, and follow where you're going. I mean, follow yourself. Thanks very much.